Leonard Blake didn't scream when he woke up. That wasn't his way. He simply opened his eyes to a ceiling that didn't belong to him. Dim light filtered through thin, uneven curtains. The sheets were coarse. The air smelled of starch, damp wood, and something faintly medicinal. There was no hum of central air, no distant jazz from his smart speakers, no automated blinds purring to life, no glistening watch caught reflected by the sun's rays. Just silence, and a draft that grazed his ankle like a whisper. He sat up slowly, frowning. The room was unfamiliar. Low ceiling, a chipped wardrobe, neatly folded clothes on a plastic chair. A small mirror leaned against the wall, partly fogged from morning breath. That's where he saw it first. A face that wasn't his, not entirely. It was familiar in the way peripheral things are. Someone he'd passed by often, but never really looked at. The eyes were Jude's, his house servant. The man who appeared when called, vanished when dismissed. Always there, never present. Leonard blinked, touched his cheek. Rougher skin. Faint stubble where there shouldn't be. A scar on the chin he didn't remember earning. But the movements, how he blinked, how his jaw tensed, felt like his own. He didn't panic. He sat there for a long while, breathing, listening, down the hall, footsteps. A voice, his voice, called out, muffled by walls. "Jude? Coffee." He stood up, too fast. The floorboards creaked beneath his weight. There was a tightness in his lower back, the beginnings of a headache, dull and persistent. He wasn't dreaming, not in the way that dreams dissolve. This stayed. No clock was ticking, just the sound of someone, him, waiting. Leonard moved toward the door, every step feeling borrowed. Leonard reached the door. His hand hesitated on the handle. He wasn't sure what he expected. Confusion, panic, an explanation. Instead, the corridor stretched before him, narrow and dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. Voices came from the kitchen, sharp and low. "Did you hear him? Sounds off this morning." "No, maybe he's just tired." Leonard swallowed. The sound of his own breath seemed too loud. He moved closer. The floor creaked underfoot. In the kitchen, Jude's body stood by the stove, hands busy with a worn kettle. His own face sat across the table, expression unreadable, scrolling on a tablet. "Coffee's ready," the man said. Voice flat. "Anything else?" Leonard blinked, tried to respond, but no words came. The man, himself, looked up, eyes sharp. "Everything all right, Jude?" Leonard's heart pounded, but he only nodded. The silence between them stretched long, like a fragile thread ready to snap. Leonard wanted to ask, why, how, but the questions were swallowed by the weight of unfamiliar skin. Instead, he forced himself to focus, to observe. He noticed how the man across from him barely touched his food, how tired the lines around his eyes were, how the world behind those screens felt smaller than it used to. And for the first time, Leonard felt something like fear, not for himself, but for the life he'd been blind to. Days passed, or maybe it was weeks. Time blurred in this borrowed body. Leonard moved through the house with quiet steps, performing tasks he once dismissed with a snap of his fingers. He cleaned, he cooked, he listened. He began to notice the small things, how Jude's hands trembled sometimes, how his smile was guarded but genuine when no one watched, how the world outside wasn't just a backdrop, but a daily struggle. Leonard's own life, in contrast, felt suddenly empty, hollow. One evening, as dusk settled into the room, Leonard found himself staring into a cracked mirror. The face looking back was no longer a stranger. It was a man he was beginning to understand. When he finally woke again in his own body, the familiar softness of silk sheets and the sterile scent of his room greeted him. But something had shifted. He walked downstairs. The house was still. His gaze found Jude, who looked up, tentative. Leonard approached slowly, stopped a step away. "Thank you," he said softly, the words feeling strange but necessary. Jude nodded, surprised. No grand gestures followed, no sudden change in orders or tone. But from that day, Leonard didn't just own his world. He belonged to it. And maybe, in the quiet space between power and humility, that was enough.